Today we want to talk about marketing to CFOs, and this will be the first of a three-part installment. When we're marketing to CFOs, we want to think a little bit differently than when we're marketing to traditional hardware or transactional buyers. The traditional hardware buyer, of course, is often looking at price and relationships and different things like that. The CFO takes a little bit different strategy. So where we might say we can save you money, or we're going to save you expense on your cost per page or cost per toner cartridge, with a CFO, we want to use a little bit different strategy. And the term I want to introduce to you today is strategic overhead expense reduction. Let's break that apart. First of all, CFOs think very strategically. So where a purchasing person might say, hey, I saved the company $5 on each print cartridge, the CFO might look at that and go, well, that's true, but I had to pay you to find that savings. Second of all, you added another vendor for me to manage, which costs $30 to $90 for every invoice they send. And now I've got even more complication. I've got another vendor in the building. There's security issues around that. So a CFO thinks more strategically. They think, how can I reduce the number of vendors? If I have fewer vendors in my organization, I have fewer invoices to manage. I have fewer people in the building. Strategically, that makes sense. I can also leverage those vendors theoretically to get lower costs. So the first way a CFO looks to be strategic is with vendor consolidation. Overhead, strategic overhead expense reduction. When a CFO looks at overhead expenses on the line item, he is looking at a number of different things. Inventory and costs, for example. So if I have to store a lot of product, my overhead is going to be higher. If I have to have people to manage vendor relationships, my overhead is going to be higher. So a CFO looks at strategic overhead expense reduction. What does that mean? That means when we're marketing and when we're selling to CFOs, we want to talk from a more strategic perspective. Their first concern is not so much will the actual item be less expensive, but overall, as a strategy for the company, will a relationship with you for managed print services be beneficial to the company? And so one of the first ways in this first installment that we've explored is vendor consolidation. And if you think about it, at its root, managed print services is a very good vendor consolidation strategy. You take a toner vendor, a service vendor, a supply vendor, a copier vendor, and you add all those together, you go from 4 vendors down to 1, maybe adding in another vendor for fax machines and fax supplies and fax services, and you see a tremendous benefit just in consolidating vendors to CFOs. And many CFOs will look at that first before they'll look at cost savings, because they know when they have one vendor, they're going to realize overhead expense savings and not having to manage as many of those vendors. And they feel like, hey, once I have it down to one vendor, I can lean into that vendor for overall cost reduction. So thanks for joining us. In the next installment, we'll take a look at the other ways CFOs look at strategic overhead expense reduction. But for now, as you're marketing to CFOs and as you're talking to CFOs, I want you to start thinking about, how can I bring this concept of strategic overhead expense reduction into the messaging and into the conversation?